My name is Justin McElroy, coordinating editor for the UBC, and this is the first debate for the Board of Governors elections for student representatives at UBC. We have 7 people here around this table, and 2 of them will be elected by students, and I'm going to ask each of them, beginning with Tag and going clockwise around, to introduce themselves in 5 to 10 seconds.
Sure. My name's Tag Jefferson. I'm a 4th-year engineering student. I've got one more here at UBC, and I'm looking to run for Board of Governors.
Eric McKinnon, 3rd-year student at UBC studying pharmacy, and looking for your vote for the UBC Board of Governors race.
My name is Matt Parson, and I'm the current AMS VP academic, and I'm a 5th-year biology student, and I'm looking forward to running for the BOG.
Hi, my name is Sumita Sharma. I'm the current rep on the Board of Governors for you guys, and I'm a 5th-year student in the Faculty of Sciences, double majoring in eyesight and psychology.
Hi, I'm Mike Saleh. I'm a 5th-year student in sociology, and I'm the current AMS Vice President Administration.
Hi, I'm Sean Craigton. I'm the current AMS Associate Vice President Academic, and I've been in that for 2 years.
Hi, my name is Justin. I'm a 5th-year student studying arts and science, and I'm currently the AUS President and a second-term senator. And I'm running for BOG. Sorry.
All right. The style of the roundtable today will not be one where people give 60-second answers to each question. We hope that it'll be a free-flowing conversation about a few big topics that always dominate the radar screens of student representatives on the Board of Governors. And the most important one, generally, is that of personal style. The student representative are comprised only 3 of 21 people on the Board of Governors, UBC's highest governing authority. And what you're able to get done in a 1-year term, as opposed to people who are there for 3 or sometimes 6-year terms, depends on how much of you can convince people in your short time to care about the issues that you think matter most. I'm going to ask Sumita, as the incumbent running for a 2nd year on the Board of Governors, why she feels that her personal style is best suited to be an effective student representative.
All right, thank you, Justin. So as Justin mentioned, I'm running for a re-election to the Board of Governors. I've been involved in UBC in various leadership capacities. Before this, I've worked on the Science and Undergrad Society as a president and executive for 3 years. So I've dealt with the UBC administration and the Faculty of Science for almost all my undergrad career. And on the board, I've been able to get a lot of things done, especially going to the lobbying for the Housing Action Task Force and working on 5 different committees, and also being appointed to 2 advisory committees and a search committee. So my personal style has resonated well with the members of the board because I've been asked by many and recommended that I should run for next year. I take that as a compliment that they see me as an effective student rep. And I like to talk about the issues a lot, so I like to engage students with whatever's going on. I'm very approachable, and I have a very student-centered approach. So the issues that come to the board, I like to take them back to students and talk about it. And in the coming year, I'm hoping to engage students more by the role of blogging and using Twitter more effectively, because right now UBC Blog has a Twitter account, but it's only active during meetings and committees. And I want to make sure that I can use it to leverage that to talk about issues that are coming to the board and issues that are being brought about or discussed at the board. So.
All right, now I'm sure we'll all have different things to say on personal style, but I know, Eric, you have strongly already in this campaign talked about a more forceful style for BOG reps to deal with UBC issues. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and thanks for asking. I don't think it's any secret, probably not even to a lot of people that are watching this video, that I'm a alpha-type personality. You know, I'm not the type of person that's going to back down from debates and arguments that can cause maybe a certain type of people to question, you know, whether or not they're, you know, harming personal relationships they have with other board members if they vote in certain ways. My perception and my goal for getting elected on the Board of Governors is to be a representative for the students. I picture, you know, myself as a funnel. You know, 47,000 student voices get channeled down into 2, I mean 3 if you count the UBC Okanagan representative, and you know that the 2 people that are standing here representing UBCO at the board level have to, you know, have the, you know, the intestinal fortitude, the guts. You know, my campaign I have it called as balls because, you know, I don't mince and dice words, but they've got to have the audacity to stand up and say, look, you know, even if it's going to cost me a little bit of my credibility with this board, I'm not going to vote for a tuition increase. That's a no. There's no way the 47,000 students that are behind me that I'm representing want the tuition to go up. You know, we've had some challenges in the past, in my opinion, over the past few years with maybe people that are a little bit too protective of their own interests, their own, you know, relationships with other board members and etc. when what they should be doing is representing student interests. That's why I got involved with this, and I know that my voice is, you know, my voice carries. You know, I can command respect when I talk, and I come to the table with my points clearly laid out with ideas that are going to push forward, and I hope that that'll make a difference.
All right, I'm just going to open up to the floor if there's any other candidates who want to talk about exactly what's the right tack to take with trying to convince the rest of the Board of Governors of certain things, and when one should advocate, even when, in the case of tuition, sometimes, no matter what you say, it's still doubtful that things are going to get changed. Mike, you put your hand up.
Yeah, over the past year, again, I'm the Vice President of Administration, so I've been dealing with over 360 clubs. And in that time, I've realized how to be very student-centric. And as well, I've been dealing with the new sub-project. So I've realized you have to be professional as well when you're dealing with UBC administration. You have to have a sense of ballsiness, but as well, you have to have a sense of respect. You're going to be sitting at a board with some of the smartest people in British Columbia, leaders in their field. So you have to approach that with some respect, and I think you won't be sacrificing any of your credibility, you know, voting against a tuition increase, if you explain to them honestly that students are behind you on this, and I think they'll respect that.
Now, Sumita, just because both candidates here have talked about the tuition question, as I understand you abstained on that question when it came to the board?
It hasn't come to the board during my term yet.
Your turn?
But I have been asked about how would I vote regarding it, so if you want to
Yeah, if you'd like to speak to that.
So I just want to mention a couple of things first. I hear on the table, and I've heard it before in different speeches given by candidates, about how important it is to be ballsy and to be a crusader, and how you're going to change things on the board. And I do want to mention that the way work is done on the board, I guess everyone here is really smart and understands how to communicate with people, but it's also about making sure you engage students before you say some things, because it's easy to be impulsive and to assume like you know what students do, but there's also some kind of prudence that comes along with the responsibility. But you have to realize that you have to consult students before you go forward and say some things. Secondly, on the tuition issue, for example, I would like to reiterate that I do believe in making education more affordable here. This past year, I worked on the Housing Action Task Force, where we explored options for affordable housing on campus for students, staff, and faculty. And the entire premise of the work group was to address affordability. When it comes to education and tuition, we had a strategic discussion around the board table about what does affordability mean, and are we addressing it, and how do we support education at UBC? And I know that the provincial recommendation of 2% tuition increase will be coming to the board soon. And a lot of students have actually brought this to my concern. And what I really hope to do is to, and I know students obviously do not want to increase tuition. I do want to make sure that I hear them properly and represent them and represent their vote on the board, and not shy away from what students really want. And I'm really communicating that. As of now, I'm also working on a plan with the new VP students, Louise Cowan. I'm waiting for the new AMS reps to be appointed, AMS executives, so we can have a plan that that helps us lobby the provincial government, the federal government, in a proper way by combining both the AMS and the UBC administration. So that plan is in discussion right now, and I hope to be able to re-elected next year so I can actually work on it with the AMS executives.
Well, we'll be speaking about tuition and affordability of housing later on, but I know Justin, Sean, Matt, and Tag, all four of you also have had leadership experiences at this university where you've liaised with administration officials in a variety of ways. So I'm interested in hearing all four of your own personal styles and working with the administration on projects, and when to work as a team and when sometimes to be a bit more critical. So we'll start with Justin.
Certainly. My background comes from the undergraduate society, certainly, but also in a lot of new work. I've been really diversifying the ways I've interacted with the university, be it through Senate, through my work with Go Global, through my work through AMS tutoring with the Learning Commons. And at every level, I've worked with the faculty and staff of UBC and been able to come up with really innovative solutions, student-centered solutions that I think benefit all of us. For example, with the Learning Commons, we're really innovating and thinking of new ways of supporting student learning on campus. And that's based on a lot of contentious discussions about funding, about who gets how much and how we're articulating that. But also, I never forget my roots. I started UBC as a student representative in first year at the Science Undergraduate Society, and that really resonates with me, giving every student the opportunity to feel empowered and enabled to make a difference at UBC. And so I guess to kind of summarize my leadership style, it's about getting buy-in, and be it through soft power or hard power, it doesn't matter. As long as you get the buy-in that you need, that's what you need to do. And finally, getting buy-in from all stakeholders, including faculty, staff, and administrators, as well as students. Anytime you can showcase student talent, student opinion, is a win for students, ultimately.
Sean?
The one thing I've learned through my time here, more than anything else, is that if you're clear and you're frank about what you want, be it something completely that seems off the table, you can get somewhere with that as long as you're not an asshole. If you're an asshole, you lose. It's as simple as that. You have to be nice. You have to make those friends. You have to make those connections. You have to build that coalition. But as long as you're clear and frank about what you want and where you're coming from, things can happen.
So the question is more of a personality style. What type of approach would you take? And I think quite fundamentally, it's a matter of not how liked you are or how adversarial are you going to be to really get a point across. It's are you going to be respected or not? I think if we look back at some of the board reps that were most effective, that the board truly respected, the first name that comes to mind is Darren Peets. He was the fire hydrant that ran as a Joe candidate. And people still talk about him because the board truly respected his opinion, and because of that what he was able to accomplish was pretty phenomenal. So it's less of how adversarial are you going to be, and what type of approach will you take to develop the trust of the board. To the point of if we're to be that crusader and use the cloak of it's fine, students back me approach, and therefore they'll listen to us. I don't think that's the most effective. Through my position as VP Academic, I've had to liaise with the university quite extensively. I should say it's VP Academic and University Affairs. And one thing that I've definitely taken away is that the unfortunate truth, and this might not come off as the nicest thing to say, is a huge proportion of the administration doesn't really care what students think, because your average student doesn't know about board policy 72, or they don't really have a nuanced understanding of what type of effect a tuition decrease or increase might have on the budgetary side or on the academic quality. So if we're to come in from that approach, immediately you're going to lose quite a lot of respect. And also to the point of speaking ability or commanding a room, I think it must be noted that the board largely functions at the committee level. It also largely functions in functions. That sounds kind of funny, but be it mixers and diners, and you really do need to be able to communicate those points that you're hoping to advocate through those types of functions. So it's really more behind the scenes. How well respected can you be, and how well of an understanding are you going to really develop on the issues that you want to push? Because if you're flubbing at any point, they'll catch on that, because they definitely have a very strong understanding, and you need someone that's willing to spend the time to have a very thought out process, a very nuanced understanding of the policy that they're trying to push forward. I'll leave it at that.
Fantastic. It's actually really interesting. You mentioned Darren. I had a chance with him. He came back
Nice.
back from Germany not too long ago. I had a chance to have a beer with him down at the casino. But yeah, I was able to sit down with him and sort of express my interest in running for board. And so he gave me some really interesting tips and guidelines and sort of what he found to be effective. And he was very much about walking the fine line of being assertive and expressing your views and saying this is what students care about and here's how I know this. But at the same time, making sure that he was gaining allies. He was definitely one for understanding that to push forward any given program or initiative at board, you needed to gain administration allies who are going to be at the table for significantly longer than your 1 12-month term. So, for instance, in my leadership style, I've run small groups. I've helped design and run conferences. I've run larger groups, so I helped set up a referendum to raise the student fee in engineering for a new building down south end of campus. I think the board level is going to be extremely consultative. I think that having board reps who are actively engaged in going out and talking to not only individual students, but student groups who might have concerns that should be represented at the board level is very important. And so that is the one campaign promise I think I'd like to make, that I will go forward outside of sort of the standard responsibilities of attendance at meetings. We'll go and talk to the AMS executive. We'll go and talk to undergraduate society presidents. We'll go and talk to other interested groups on campus. I'm not promising milk and cookies and barbecues and whatever every weekend, but at least once with as many groups as possible.
All right. Well, that is the end of that topic on personal leadership style. And the next thing I want to talk to all candidates about is affordability of housing. It's something that is a huge issue to all students, whether you live in Carrisdale or Kitsilano or Point Grey or Surrey, and or on campus itself. And while the university is trying to build more units, the ones that they propose for the future at this point are listed to be around the $900 range. So I want to get a conversation going here of is $900 affordable enough for students? And if not, what can be done to work with the board to lower that price for future housing developments built? Sean?
This is a really good topic. It's really important, and it's something I've been trying to work on for ages. Recently, there was a student housing financing endowment set up from the proceeds of market housing, which is great, and that money now is borrowed by UBC Housing and Conferences to build new residences. Unfortunately, UBC attaches a rather high interest rate to that loan, that internal loan of about 5%, which is higher than market rates for sure. And so housing ends up with a huge amount of money they have to pay back, as well as interest rates of about $17 million last year they paid in interest. If you just take away that 5% interest rate, suddenly housing can look way more affordable here at UBC, because Housing and Conferences has to break even on their budget, which is fair. That's what they're expected to do by the Board of Governors. But if you change the rules around the money they're allowed to access and the way they can do it, that can be made, that break-even point can be much, much lower, and as a result, they can charge much, much lower rents. And I think this is really, really important. You could drop it by $100, maybe $200 a month easily, just with that one little change. It's all internal UBC money. It's not even a big deal for UBC. We'd get the same amount of housing, and we'd get it cheaper.
Anyone else have anything to say on the topic? Or one thing that has been becoming increasingly clear is that this is an issue not only for students but for staff and faculty as well. There's been a lot of roundtables looking at that, and I'm wondering who here is interested in pursuing more of a partnership with faculty and staff in finding a way that gets all groups on campus. And I saw Eric had his hand up first, so I'll let him start. But everyone feel free to join in after somebody says their bit.
I'll speak to that. Matt and I were at the Housing Action Task Force for faculty and staff just this past week, and it was made very clear through the impassioned speeches from a number of staff members. And these aren't necessarily people that are facing the same challenges as students, right? We come in and we require a set amount of space for a certain amount of time. A lot of students are transient; they're not even staying here the whole year. Whereas faculty are coming in here and they're showing up with families, they're showing up with children. And it's extremely challenging to find enough space sometimes, or enough space at a certain cost. So there was very impassioned speeches from the faculty side. The most important point that I heard from it, and I'll let Matt speak to his experience with the meeting, was when one of the faculty members got up from the Faculty of Math and made the point that we need to stop talking about this as a faculty and staff debate, because if it's a challenge for the faculty, there's no way the staff could ever afford to live here. And that really resonated with me. And the same day I was in Woodward getting coffee from the cafe, and because I'm in pharmacy, I pretty much never leave Woodward. I have a good relationship with the staff there, and I asked them, I said, where do you guys live? Oh, we live out in Delta, White Rock, Langley, wherever it is, and we're commuting in here hours every day. Like, really? So you've never thought of living closer to campus? Well, that's impossible. I can't afford it. So it makes it very clear instantly that this isn't just a challenge that students are facing. Having said that, I think one of the big benefits that students have is that we're a massive part of this community, and if we position ourselves correctly, we can turn ourselves into a partner and show the faculty and staff and the administration, like, hey, we're here to help make this community a better place. My goal is to make sure that when I leave UBC, I leave it better off than it was when I got here. And I think that if every student doesn't take that kind of opinion or feeling towards their community, then they're missing a big part of what they're going to get out of their experience here at this university. So yeah, that having a chance to, and I know Sumitha's done a lot of work with this, obviously, through her year on the board, having a chance to see how the faculty and staff truly feel was pretty eye-opening.
And I'm gonna Matt and then Sumita and then we'll go.
And if there's ever any student that isn't necessarily sold on the basis that a student rep that is elected in by students should be advocating for any issues that are tied to faculty and staff, I'd argue that you can't really look at them like they're siloed issues because everything is connected. I mean, the amount of anecdotal stories that we heard coming up at the housing forums of faculty members that are working in the department level, hiring people, and constantly having a high caliber of faculty turned away, declining offers because they just can't afford to live in this housing market was really outstanding. And you have to question whether UBC can really remain in this caliber of academic success if we aren't able to attract academic members that are of a high standing.
And Sumita, just because you've dealt with this on the board for the last year and you've seen this policy come through, and as a student, there obviously must be some frustration with what's there right now. But what are ways that can be done to change the board's perception on what truly is affordable housing here?
Okay, so thanks for that. And I really enjoy the discussion going on right now because the forum that Matt and Eric attended obviously have been working on the committee since April, and there have been a lot of challenges in just defining the issue, what is affordable. For students, for example, I think someone mentioned on the table that the amount of money they receive for student loans is about, I think, $500 or so a month for rent, and the disparity arises because even the rent for Gage, for example, or Totem is higher for living on campus. I do want to mention how student housing, the endowment fund, is a big win for students because at present, about 29% of undergrad full-time students live on campus, and that endowment fund actually at present allows us to go forward with the goal of housing 50% of students, undergrad full-time students on campus. That being said, the board realizes that we need to really define what is affordable, and that varies for master's students, that varies for grad students, postdocs as well, with young students with families who live on campus. So it's definitely a big issue to define that, and the task force I've been on has been struggling with this issue as well. And we've worked to create this range of options of housing, including co-development, rental, and non-rental market housing, and seeing how do you want to distribute this across campus. And we're bringing this to the board forward about in April. We're discussing this, and I hope we can convince the board that there is a dire need for addressing the housing problem on campus.
Right. Mike and Justin, just because you haven't spoken at this panel yet, do the two of you have anything to say on this?
Right. Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about the staff housing, and this is comes from this the housing forum. It was said housing on campus is a crisis, and it is a crisis. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about student housing because I think we're elected from student representatives, and we should talk a little bit more about student housing. The average student graduates with around $27,000 in debt after they graduate. Affordability should be the number one issue of the board. And I'm not just talking about housing, I'm talking about tuition, I'm talking everything from food prices, textbooks. Students are getting gouged left, right, and center. And whether or not there's a reason or calculated or not, the board or planning or whoever is dealing with whichever issue, there should be consultation processes, and more than consultation, they should be coming to students, whether it be the AMS or undergraduate societies, not just making presentations, but saying, hey, what do you think about this? Let's start this conversation and let's figure out what's acceptable to students. This is your campus as well, students. Students have to be stop being seen as just a transient body that's here or a cash cow. We're here to learn, and this is our campus.
Justin?
Yep, just to reiterate, This is a holistic issue facing all of campus, and it's rightly so that a lot of other candidates have mentioned that faculty staff are a huge issue, and they are huge possible allies in this matter. The fact of the matter is that, yes, there's a lot of students that are transient, but I think if we focus our efforts and align our interests with that of faculty and staff, we really see that there's a lot of overlap of what they want. If we look to, for example, Place and Promise, the strategic plan for UBC, the 3 pillars are student learning, community engagement, and research excellence. And we can't have any of that if we're not attracting the top faculty to UBC. And it's not even for reasons that we're not a world-class institution, it's because they can't afford to live in Vancouver. I think that's a huge loss to faculty, huge loss to staff and students, and it really reduces UBC's longevity and resilience in this global climate. We don't know when we're going to get out of this, economic climate, and we don't know if it's going to happen again. And so in order to shore up what we've got here, we need to really think holistically and work with every partner we can possibly get to make UBC a truly globally relevant place to learn. And it's really a case of, united we stand and divided we fall. And I think all of us share that sentiment.
All right, because we're going into people speaking for the second time, let's try and keep it under 30 seconds. We'll go to Tag, but first I just want to let everyone know that the housing action plan that a lot of people have been spoken about, they can go to campus and community planning to get more detailed information, the many, many pages on that. They want to immerse themselves more. So, Tag?
Sorry, I haven't spoken yet. And everybody has said extremely good points, and I agree with everything. But just for my own sake, last summer I did a housing survey. I looked at 350 different rental opportunities that a standard student would be able to go into. Made a big giant spreadsheet all the way from Point Grey to New West. And when you take the price it would cost for the rental unit, plus rental insurance, plus sort of standard stuff, maybe utilities were included, maybe not, maybe cable, internet, everybody needs the internet. When you factor that in, plus minimum wage and in some cases work study wage of the time that you'll be sitting on a bus or waiting for a bus, it is always cheaper to live on campus. And I thought that was mind-bogglingly critical in this discussion. I think we need to be able to formalize that and take that to the university and say, there's big problems here, not just with housing, but it ties into the transit infrastructure as well. So we're starting to see all these arguments get sort of pulled into one.
Yeah. I just want to go back to the thing I said earlier about the student housing financing. I agree with you, Zamita, that it is absolutely a win, but the structure as it is could be better, is what I'm saying. And I want to ask each candidate here, will you commit to talking about changing the rules around borrowing money from that endowment fund for housing and talk about reducing or eliminating the interest rate that UBC Housing has to pay back on those loans? This year, they paid back $17 million to UBC Central. That is money that students then had to pay in rent.
All right, so just go around the table quickly. Justin?
Sure.
Yes, definitely. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. It's not like if you take it from here, somewhere else has to pay it. We just have to be a little bit more creative with the ways in which UBC is financing its operations.
Again, yeah, definitely. Just to reiterate my point before, by committing to talking about these changes, or at least committing to talking about making student housing more affordable, where we can make a difference in students' lives. Think about it. How many students do you know, and I'm sure each of us know at least one or two, who couldn't finish their education or was like, oh, UBC, damn, it's not that just the rent is too damn high, but the education itself is too damn high. I can't go to school and work full time, so therefore I can't go to school, or I can't take student loans because I'm not eligible for whatever reason. There's so many problems, and we need to address them, and student housing and housing in general for the campus is integral to that.
I would say definitely I would talk about it and bring it up. I also understand the challenges that come when you bring issues like this up, and I want to formulate a good understanding of why it works the way it does, because the UBC finances are managed by the IMANT, and they definitely have a smart group of people who know what they're doing, but they're also, every cause, there's also like a social cause attached to it, and that's where we come in. So definitely ask about why is this happening this way, and understand more of the financial structure, because I don't have a strong finance background, but I'm always open to learning and asking those questions.
So the question was, would I engage in discussions on how the student housing financial endowment fund works?
Especially with regard to the interest rate that
with the interest rate. Okay.
has to be borrowed.
Well, I've already engaged in discussions around this, particularly with Andrew Parr, who's the Director of Student Housing and Hospitality. And the way that he broke it down was it's a matter of how many beds do we want and in how many years versus how affordable do we want the bed. So I think the answer in short would be that answer needs to be passed on to the students because, I mean, I'm somewhat pragmatic. I understand that buildings cost money, but at the very same time, if students can't realistically afford to live in there, then we should address that issue first. And to the same point, I think that if we can make a strong case that it is above market rates, the 5% interest rate, then that should be reduced. And also looking at different structures where any interest that is collected by the university should then just go back into that endowment fund to fund more student housing.
I think that the idea you have is good. The challenge is that there's money in one pocket and the other all over the place in an organization that's $902 million a year. And there's places that there's other places this money could come from that don't necessarily touch the way that the infrastructure and financing and endowments work. First of all, 2011-2012 projection for housing conference profits and contribution back to the general budget is $4.4 million. That's ridiculous. We're sitting at the Housing Action Plan Forum, and one of the things that the Campus Community Planning is saying is we're looking at, here's an idea, where we may allow the faculty to have nonprofit housing. And I'm sitting here like, well, I'm a student, where's my nonprofit housing, right? Why are we kicking $4.4 million back to the general budget? Because what happens then is if this is another avenue for UBC Finance to rake cash in, why aren't we going to raise the rent all the time? Right? They're just thinking, okay, look, we don't want to go too high in tuition, or the budget's a little bit too high. We can just, push the rent up another % or two and reclaim more back through the contribution, right? So if we were running housing at a nonprofit, I'm not necessarily concerned about where the cash comes from. I'm with you. We need to make sure that students pay a fair price that's something that they can afford.
You're looking at the small fish where the big fish is this financing. Over 50% of housing and conferences costs come solely from the financing arrangements, including loan repayment and interest repayment, which is why I'm trying to get the big fish where the $4 million is a drop in the bucket for them.
Right. Eric, if you have a brief response, and then we'll go to Tag.
The only thing that I'll say is I'm not a financing wizard. There are financing wizards on the Board of Governors like Alice Laberger. She's director of the Royal Bank, right? These are people that I trust to help make these decisions. I will go and research on behalf of students and find out what they want. Matt made a very good point, and I like what Mike said as well. It's all about total cost of education. If we bring housing down, tuition goes through the roof, or if all of a sudden the food prices double, what are we doing, right? Students only have one wallet. You can pull the cash out of it 50 different ways, but the bottom line is it's all coming out of the same place.
Yeah. Janita said that she had one thing she quickly wanted to say, and then Tag, I promise. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I don't want to take stats, Eric, but it seems a little disingenuous when you say, I support staff and faculty housing, but why are they planning to have non-profit rental housing for staff? I just want to make it clear that that's an option. It still hasn't been, it's an option for people with very low household incomes and single parent family. And I think for those people, it may be a below market rental rate may be a good option to consider. So it's not something that antagonizes students.
Are a very low income group.
I definitely do think so, but I'm also saying if we're trying to make a plan that accommodates staff, faculty, and students, we have to think of options for all three of them.
Absolutely.
All right, Tag.
Thank you for bringing this up. I was lucky enough to be able to pull the numbers of the UBC Endowment before the economy tanked and after the economy tanked. And it was another mind-boggling sort of set of figures. And then UBC enacted an encroachment policy on their internal bursaries. So the internal rate of return went from 5% to 3.5%. Now that's a big hit. It seems sort of small, 1.5%, but that's a big hit. But taking 1.5% off of say that internal loan would be significant, and matching of what UBC currently is getting from its own bursaries. So that might be one way that you could easily implement that at what would hopefully be a zero sum if you could match that with a bursary, given that the economy is now a bit better, some of the funds are no longer underwater, and perhaps we can take back the encroachment policy on some select funds.
All right. Yeah. Great debate here. I'm sure we could all talk how the rent is too damn high for a long time, but there are other topics that the Board of Governors deal with, and none is higher up than governance. As we all know, UBC hosts a permanent population of around 12,000 right now, 8,000 students in student housing, as well as about 40,000 extra people that come to and from the campus each day. The university is the largest urban area in Canada without any municipal government. Municipal responsibility was transferred from Metro Vancouver to the provincial government 2 years ago, with the intent of, in the short to medium term, it being in flux, but a long-term solution for governance of the non-academic lands being enacted. To date, that has not happened, and in an interview with the UBC in last December, President Stephen Toop said that because the University Neighborhoods Association was still dealing with their internal governance issues and no one was fully speaking out on the governance issue yet, that the Board of Governors at this point was not going to come forward with their own plan until things were settled. I suppose the question for all the candidates around this table is, would they, as a student representative, forcefully advocate governance reform, or would they go along with what the Board of Governors is doing and look at whether other groups and other stakeholders on campus are actively pursuing this before pushing anything? Tech?
Sure, I can start. I think that yes, getting all the stakeholder input in any form of governance is very important, especially with Bill 20. If it sort of goes along the path that the university is currently hoping it does, it will give an unprecedented control of the university to non-elected officials on the Board of Governors. So that's a really interesting debate. Typically, municipalities run with elected officials as the majority of their council. Not having the board be directly responsible to sort of voters would sort of, in some cases, perhaps be a conflict of interest, and students might not be able to impress the board, not be able to give their opinions to the board as well as they could. I think that's an issue that definitely needs to be examined. So if we want to continue going forward with sort of Bill 20 as it currently stands, we need to get everybody's input to make sure that we find a way to effectively make board responsible to the university and the environments.
Matt?
Sure. In the issue of governance, it definitely is one where all stakeholders really need to be engaged, just because if it's just the students that are rallying for a reform in governance, where residents are just kind of being quiet, then there's a chance of mixed messaging to occur of, oh, well, students really care, but the residents don't want any change. It needs to have a sort of a critical mass, so to speak, of people buying into it across campus. And really, I think if there's to be a lot of change to occur and expedite the governance process to happen, it's going to have that pressure that's developing across campus directed at the province, and then the province pressuring the university into engaging in governance talks. Because right now, of course, I mean, UBC doesn't want to go away from the status quo. They have complete autonomy over any governance. Why would they give that up? So, and no student, no resident has the ability to tell UBC with complete authority that they should change their governance. It's going to have to come from the province, so that's where we should be directing our efforts.
Okay. Anyone on the table have to speak on that?
I'll definitely mention that during the past year, as I've been elected, I haven't seen, there have been explicit talks at the board table about governance, but there have been concerns brought about by a lot of different challenges the board has seen, be it when the Best Neighborhood Plan came about, or when issues come about complaints against RCMP. So the governance structure will definitely seep into all the layers that UBC has and all the different strata. So I guess it is a big piece that will be coming together in the future. And I hope that students choose a BOG rep that realizes the challenges that come along with involving all the stakeholders and the process that has to be undertaken for doing so.
Justin, should the lands west of Blanca be incorporated into its own unique municipality?
I think that's an interesting question, and one that was born a lot of debate. I haven't personally done enough research to give a definitive answer, but I think that that's not an admission of ignorance. I think that's by admission that I want to do more research before I give you an answer, and I think that's a quality that any BOG rep should have.
Mike, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to echo what everyone else said about really consulting with all stakeholders. But first and foremost, we have to see what's in the best interest of students. Most students on campus are apathetic. So how does that affect governance structure? Do you know what I mean? If we change stuff, that could really, really ruin the student experience here. We could turn into actually a city when we want to be a university. So we have to be very careful with this. We have to really consult, see what's in the best interest of students, and I think it would be very unwise to make a decision right now without all the facts on the table.
Can I make a brief comment on this? I agree with you, absolutely. The students, and one of the challenges is, like you said, there's a lot of apathy. I think too, it's fun when you turn the page and you see someone like electoral district A. We had a student running in that election, which I thought was fantastic. And that shows me that while
we had two students.
We were two students running. Well, there you go. I only met Alexandra, so I didn't have a chance to meet the other one. But there we go. So we had students running in the electoral district A election, right? There shows that there's people that are interested in the way the governance is going to be structured here. I think that I believe it was you that made a point about how the board structure works and the fact that there's 11 appointed members of the board, and that it does create a bit of an issue, especially when perception is reality. And from the outside looking in, and if you see 11 appointed people from the province making decisions on this area, there may be some legitimate beefs that can be had from that. The only thing that I'll say on the topic is that, my opinion is that the board can drive this change and help get more people interested. When we talk about building a hospice, all of a sudden there was a ton of interest in this campaign. We're getting national newspapers down here, and all of a sudden, wow, holy crap, the governance is a big issue, right? But it doesn't necessarily need to be a bunch of fires that are lit. The board can go out and say, hey, we want to be a leader. We want to talk to the UNA. We want to talk to Metro Van. What does everyone want to see happen here? And then meet with the province and say, hey, let's go ahead and do this and get it done. But I agree with you. We got to be careful on how we approach this, especially as student representatives to the board, because the students do come first, especially for us.
All right, Matt.
On the topic of governance, personally, I don't think that anyone really would have the answer at this point of what the final form will look like. It's a very complicated issue, and you would really have to be an expert in the field. And I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I don't think we have any people that are experts in that area. But I think that gutturally, a lot of us would have an understanding of what the process should look like, and to say that the board should be the one that's championing this process is a bit concerning. I would almost advocate for the complete opposite. I think that they should have the honesty and transparency to say we are going to have an open process conducted by a third party, and not us sort of determining what governance structure we're going to have in place that's going to hold us accountable.
Sean?
Yeah, I'm not an expert, but I'm not too bad at this. Long term, like thinking very long term here, we've created a university where there are really two worlds. There's the academic world, there's the institutional, there's where classrooms are and student spaces are. You've got student residences, and there's some amenities. And then we've got this completely separate world of mostly market housing. Some faculty staff, mostly market, where there are private residences and there really isn't any academic value to it. These two worlds at some point have to be split off. It's a reality of it. We've got town and gown, and they cannot be under the same governance structure. That's where all this conflict is coming from. You've got an academic authority telling a group of people who feel like they live here in these residential areas, oh, we're going to add more houses there. And the people in the residential areas go, hey, no, we live here, we don't want that. And the other people go, too bad. That works for now, because there's not that many people in the residential areas. But that can't work forever, especially with the build-out that we have. There are going to be so many people on this campus that are not affiliated with the university in any particular way that it won't work. We're going to end up with a town that doesn't like the university. We're going to end up with a university that doesn't like the town. And the only way for that to work better in the long run is for them to have separate governance structures. So in my mind, I see this going towards the point where everything east of Westbrook Mall, or more or less everything east of Westbrook Mall, and everything south of 16th, excluding the farm, becomes some sort of other, be it a city, be it
village.
Village. Some other governance structure where all those neighborhoods where these residents live are operated separately, and the university goes slightly differently.
Yeah, Justin, do you just want to say something final on governance before we move on?
Yeah, I think Sean's point is really prescient. I think something's got to give. And the university, I think the student reps need to be really skeptical, because I think everyone will agree here that the university's done a really nice job packaging this university town kind of complex, this academic market combination, into this weird chimera. And it's very attractive on paper, but I think every student rep here is very concerned about the future. And Sean's points and everyone's points are very prescient, and this is what's going to, I think, lead the discussions in 2012, especially with the departure of Stephen Owen. Student reps are going to need to really champion this as the next big thing, because no one else can see the forest for the trees.
All right. So let's move on to, I know we can all talk about this and a bunch of other subjects, but I want to move on to the topic of tuition and of affordability, of just paying to go here. And over the last few years, after the provincial government stopped with annual 10, 15, 20% increases in tuition at around 2005, 2006, it was capped at 2% per year. And that's where UBC has been for domestic students during that time. And during that time as well, at least on the Board of Governors level for student reps, there has been a general consensus that a 2% increase per year is fine. Is anyone here wanting to speak out against that consensus? Yes, Mike?
I'll speak out against it. Year after year after year, student representatives on the board abstain from the tuition vote. When any data that we collect, whether it be through referenda asking, is tuition too damn high, to anecdotal evidence, to asking your friends or ask yourself, we're all students here, is tuition too high? Most students say yes, overwhelmingly. I want to go to the board and present that point and say, you know what? Students think tuition is too high. We should vote against it and represent the students' needs. And a lot of student reps, I feel, think you'll lose a lot of political capital by doing that. And I don't think that's true. I think if you honestly approach the board and say, listen, this is what students feel. Let's have instead of the discussion, what will happen if we cap tuition or rate or increase it by 2-4%. Let's have the discussion what we want this university to look like, and more importantly, what will that cost? And I think that's a very important question that's really being left out. They've been separated. There's the costs, and then what we want this university to be, and they're actually one and the same.
All right, Mike. Matt, do you agree with Mike?
I would have to say that they should have a more fleshed out understanding of that 2%. What does that equate to? Can it be found at other non-student sourced areas? And if so, then yes, they should vote against that, because affordability is a main concern for students, and that 2% does turn into quite a lot of money for students. But if they do have a fiduciary responsibility to the board, to the university, and if it's what's the best interest for the university, for the academic institution, and therefore students, then they should vote yes.
All right, Sumita?
Okay, so a couple of points in this. Starting with the history of why there's a 2% increase. The University of BC was mandated by the provincial government and to increase the cost of tuition every year by 2% according to the cost of living standards. And that's something that I learned doing some research. And that's an issue is going to come up again in April during my term. And what I want to do is, similar to what Matt mentioned, is that look at other sources of how can education be made affordable. And that's what I've been working on in making this plan with the UBC Admin to lobby the provincial government for enhanced student financial aid, and also increased student need awards. There's like merit-based awards in UBC, and there's also need-based awards like bursaries. So kind of increase that need-based awards funding more. Also, I was reading a consultation document that came out of consultations last year for tuition consultations. And in the undergraduate level, 0 students attended at the Open Public Forum, which is very shocking compared to grad students where 70 people attended. And grad students had different concerns. Their concerns were about, their program for PhD is funded for 4 years and they cannot complete it in 4 years. They also have concerns like the TA salaries don't increase when they're according to the tuition increase. So, and this year the board has asked the UBC administration to bring back the results from those consultations, and have we changed that from last year? Have we given those grad students those opportunities to actually have affordable education on campus? And Also, have we given undergrads more need-based awards in the past year? So depending on the sum of all those different things, it will be up to the student board rep to be very prudent and also engage students. If students don't come out to the open forum, it's up to the student reps to actually go out to them and engage them and get a feel for, what are the actual needs of students and lobby that to the board.
For those that haven't answered this question yet, I'll just throw in an extra wrinkle of, is it more important to focus on tuition, or is it important to focus on things like student loan reform and bursaries and other areas? And you can either go off on that or focus on the tuition itself. And I'll have Tag first and then Eric.
Sure. I think it's definitely not an issue of one thing or another thing. It's definitely a very broad-reaching issue and is all around affordability. So housing ties into this as well. Transit, bursaries, and I had one really interesting point to add to Sumeda. She mentioned financial aid, increased financial aid for students, and I would sort of look to work with the E3 program, the Enriched Educational Experiences. At one point, there was a rumor going around that perhaps there could be a small bursary attached to successfully completing an E3. So this means that students could be getting a small amount of money, potentially, for doing extracurricular activities on campus, which I thought was amazing. So not only would it encourage the community and help build the campus, but it would also sort of be interesting addition to help work on the students' financial debt.
There's 3 points I want to make on this. This is a serious topic for students, and I agree with what you said. And Sumeda, I really agree with what you said about the fact that UBC did go out and ask everybody about this in April and March last year. Nobody showed up. I came to the Board of Governors meeting where the budget was being voted on to see how our student representatives voted. And even the planned protest that was outside ended up, after about 30 minutes or so, just being "don't raise tuition" signs laid on the ground kind of thing. I actually got a photo and ended up posting quite a lengthy article about it, that UBC students, frankly, they just don't care. Whether or not they don't care because they don't know, we're not sure, and that's your role as a current board representative and whoever gets elected role to go and find out. So yeah, 3 points I want to make. First of all, I really feel it's misguided to say a 2% tuition increase. I know we all like to talk about a 2% tuition increase because that's the low number. This year, in the 2011-2012 budget, domestic tuition is going from 203 to 212 million in the budget. That's not a 2% increase, that's 4.4%. Right, so there's a budgeted 2% increase, but there's also an increase that comes in behind that's unbudgeted growth, right? So if UBC was to say, hey, we're only going to raise this total number by 2%, check the budget.
It's enrollment, that's what you're talking about.
Regardless, if we're going to...
More people paying the same amount.
If we're going to raise the amounts, there's a lot of figures in the budget that come in regards to tuition. Same with international. The planned increase of 3.5% and then the 4% budgeted growth, right? We say a 4% budgeted growth, but then there's planned increases that come in behind it. And there's a lot of numbers that move around here. To call it a 2%, I think, is really not doing a lot of justice. There needs to be a way that we approach this. Second point is, again, total cost of education. We come back to this over and over and over. It makes no sense to go to the university and say, let's have a tuition freeze, and then the price of rent goes up 10% in our residences. That's not going to help anybody. Again, it's got to be all about the total cost of education. How can we make sure that stays flat or comes down, or whatever it is we can do to make education more affordable for all of our students. And finally, I do appreciate that the board is working with the government to increase access to student loans. Okay, I've been here for 2.5 years, and I'm in my third year now. My student loan debt is already $33,000. I just got my assessment in the mail last week. I don't need access to more loans. That's not what I want. I don't want any more loans. You can stop me right here at $14,500 at the loan cap and help me fund my education in other ways, and I would be very appreciative of that. But telling me, like, you know what, we did a job for you as students. We went out and got the maximum increase to $30,000 a year, so now you can afford to go to school. What's that going to do? Inflation is just going to keep happening, and students are going to have to pay those bills eventually. So, yeah.
All right, Justin?
Well, this issue is really close to my heart because I'm a student who works 2 jobs to fund my education, and I know it costs a lot to come here. And the thing is, whether it's a 2% increase or not, it doesn't really matter. The thing is that we need to work on is kind of frictionless support for students. And I really like that word frictionless. We need to remove as much bureaucracy as we can and increase the amount of funding that we can get for students in meaningful ways. And for example, one of the great ways that we're seeing a lot of increases is through the work-study program. Students are getting on-the-job experience, but they're also getting money back, and they're contributing back to the university. That filled out, almost immediately, right away at the beginning. I think there's a lot of talk about that we can do internally regarding financial aid that Sumita's also alluded to. But also, I don't think student loans, that's not off the table. Like, having access to them is great, but I think holistically, when we look at problems like housing, like transit, these are all provincial issues. We're going to have to go to them with those issues. And I think it's really effective to present it as a suite of inaccessibility issues to UBC, to the provincial government. And I think they have a vested interest in possibly not supporting students because, where the money goes where the votes go. And the votes are going to the baby boomers, basically. And so we're going to have to really work with UBC because it's in their best interest to work with us on this tuition issue as a provincial issue as well.
All right, Sean, did you have your hand up?
I did. Forgot what I was going to say, but I will say something anyway. I've been reading the budget for a long time, actually, probably longer than most people here, since I've been in this job for a couple of years. I think you were talking. There's enrollment increases as well that go into there, but I get your point of like, it's not just a small number. It's a lot of money, right?
We put a tag on it, but
yeah, there's a lot of money involved here. But I'm not so worried. This domestic tuition increase of 2%, it is 2%. That's what we're talking. We haven't talked about international tuition.
Exactly.
We really need to talk about international tuition. Recently, there was a guarantee made to the incoming class, or it's proposed to be made to the incoming class, that tuition will be increased by no more than 2% for the next 4 years for them, so they know what their tuition is going to be. That, I think, is really, really, really important. As domestic students, we have a luxury of having a sense of how expensive like our tuition, our cost of education will be, however imperfect that may be. International students don't have any of those safeguards, and we really need to make sure that that is continued throughout the year. That should be offered to the next cohort, to the cohort after that, and the cohort after that. But it shouldn't just be for 4 years. It should be for 5, maybe 6 years, until someone has done their degree. They should have that certainty.
All right, we have a lot of hands up for a second round at this, so I'm going to ask everyone for, if it is your second time, 20 seconds or under here. And Sumita?
I just want to resonate with Sean just mentioned. I was going to mention how the domestic student tuition increase is linked to the CPI, and how the international student tuition increase is linked to the HEPI, which is the Higher Education Price Index, which is 3%. And previously, many years ago, the tuition was frozen at a certain limit for international students to give them the guarantee that that's how much the tuition is going to increase by and no more than that. And that's one thing I actually want to bring to the board this year and discuss the possibilities of having that. And at present, too, for domestic students, UBC raises the fee by less than the Higher Education Price Index, so less than 3%, 2%. So there are some positives. I guess they do realize that there is a need for making education more affordable. And as a board rep, my job also comes in, as Eric was asking, how can we, it's not about having more student loans, it's maybe about having a low interest rate to pay for student loans after you're done your education. So a lot of things that we can come into play, and I definitely think that student reps have a lot to offer in terms of lowering tuition and lobbying for more affordable education on campus.
All right, Justin?
Well, from my role on Student Senate, this came up during Pierre Roulet's presentation on the budget, and the faculty are very concerned about international students as well, and I think we've been a little slow as students, as the AMS, to kind of take a position on this, but I believe we're making a lot of great strides, and it's in line with the faculty. It's not in their best interest to have countless under-supported international students funding the rest of us. We've seen the collapse in Australia, and that's not something we want to see replicated here.
Tag?
And I would echo that point. I actually graduated high school in Japan. We had a UBC recruiter come to our school, talk to these students, and the general consensus among many students, 2 did end up coming, 2 of my class are here, but the general consensus was that UBC was going to cost them the same amount of money as it would cost to go to a potentially better school in the United States.
Matt?
I definitely think that lobbying and advocating for international students is definitely worthwhile, but one constituent or demographic of students that is generally overlooked is graduate students. And one thing that is generally not really considered is almost all of these students are here paying for their education through their TA-ship, which is not tied to CPI. They're not getting annual increases, but their cost of being here is, which is both controlled by UBC. So, I mean, there should be a case made that whatever increase in tuition should have an effect on how much the TAs are getting paid as well.
All right, we're going to do a quick little lightning round here on a couple of subjects. And so I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask all. I'm going to ask all of you, and I'm going to mix it up so some of you have more prep time each time. I want you to. First question is, what do you think in 10 years' time would be the ideal transportation system to UBC? And we'll start with Justin.
I think so. In 10
years' time, what's there?
I mean, ideally, we could just we could just jump in a little tube and it would teleport us over and we'd be here. But not to be facetious, something that light rapid rail I think is the way to go for that. And I think it'll really resonate with a lot more people then, because we'll have much bigger population here.
SkyTrain and a ferry from North Van or West Van.
I would say rapid rail, but we're getting away from the issue. Why there's a transit crisis right now is because there's not enough student housing on campus, and I think we can't get away from that issue. They're one and the same. They're interlinked. So definitely rapid rail. We need more transit to campus, but we also need more student housing.
I would say rapid rail transit as well, and it's something that the board is effectively working on right now to put it in Mentor Vancouver's agenda. So I do see that happening, assuming we do have good student reps at the board.
Ideally, of course, rapid rail. Option B in the TransLink consultation right now, if I had to be specific. Realistically, 10 years though, that's not going to happen. So being pragmatic, just actually having a bus service that isn't passing students by.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Matt said. My ideal transportation system in 10 years to get to class is using your feet, because you're able to live here and there's space to go. Having said that, if your question was 15 years from now, I would say, yeah, let's punch a hole in Broadway and get a SkyTrain all the way up here from the Millennium Line. 10 years, I'm iffy as to whether or not that we even have enough time between now and then, now that Evergreen's been approved and it's a go-ahead. So, yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, we would like, said, teleporting here and stuff and jumping in a tube, but I think that there's a lot of work that can be done within the 10 years to make this a heck of a lot better system, and that's what we need to work on.
And I'm going to echo a lot of the same statements. From an engineering perspective, 10 years would be pushing it to be able to build that much rail in those densely populated areas. Possible, not so easy, but I think that would be the ideal solution.
All right, Tag, now it's your turn on the hot seat. People talk about the war on fun a lot at UBC, the decrease of the number of sociable activities that can happen on campus. What is one thing that UBC could do or advocate for right now that would turn that around for students?
Sure, I think more effective liaison with the campus RCMP. A lot of the rules are set by the RCMP, and the rules that the RCMP sets do not necessarily have to correlate with what the liquor board is actually saying. They can designate their own rules, and having sort of an effective student or faculty or staff, I don't know the ideal solution, but having some sort of effective liaison that isn't hundreds of random people coming in and out with problems, I think would be very valuable.
What can we do right now to solve the war on fun?
One thing.
One thing we can do right now, I've heard rumblings, this way and that way about the future of Thunderbird Stadium. The one thing we can do right now is purchase the $350,000 cover that athletics promised we can put down on that tarp, so we can start having concerts in the stadium again, because that's our concert venue on campus, and I miss that.
If I had to do or change one thing in regards to the war on fun, I can't buy into the fact that it all ties back to liquor licenses. I see a dying beer culture on campus. It's a shame. I mean, I'm a fraternity man myself, and there's no one out there that would want more of that. But the case is that isn't really what students want nowadays. I think one of the most well-attended events that I ever saw was when Ron Jeremy was debating someone who was a sex addict, and it was ridiculous. It filled up multiple auditoriums in Wood, and that was something that was a highlight for plenty of students. It was incredible. If I had to propose one thing, it would be reforming how UBC events is conducted. I think that the fact that they produce a fantastic calendar that all events are thrown onto in an unnavigable way is good. It's a start, but realistically we have, if you consider faculty, staff, and students here, closing in on 100,000 people, you could hire 2, 3, 4 more people that are able to facilitate holding events, bringing in speakers, and creating those signature events that are happening year to year.
So I'm all for creating campus culture, and in my involvement in UBC, I've been definitely working hard to create a community on campus. And I remember this term when it came around, when Tyler Allison was around, the War and Fun term became really famous around campus. And I think as a board rep, it really comes down to governance. And because our CMP also involved around governance. So if we can kind of move towards a model where we have a better governance structure, we may see less of the War and Fun.
One thing I'm doing right now, actually, to battle the war on fun is I'm working with the RCMP, and I'm working with classroom services and other university officials to try to start setting up community-based special occasions license board, where it'll be based by community members to see whether accepted or decline these special occasions license, as opposed to being arbitrarily accepted or declined by the RCMP. So that's something I'm working on right now. Something I'll be working on hopefully in 5 minutes is drinking a beer with all you guys.
Yeah, we have to stop the encroachment of residential areas into institutional lands. Eric, I would love to buy that tarp. I think that's the best idea ever. But in 6 years' time, I'm not convinced that Thunderbird Stadium will even be there, because they're building right around it, and they're all condos, and that's a lot of money. I think we have to really address that problem of what is this and where is the line? Mm-hmm. And the easy fruit, the SOLs. That's definitely something that would make a huge difference to so many organizers on campus.
Yeah, I have to agree with Sean and Mike here. It's about the SOLs. I mean, being president of the Arts Undergraduate Society and having people talk to me about Arts County Fair and trying to rebuild that culture, it's not going to happen with the current SOL processes. The RCMP is already under-resourced as it is, and they're not going to try to permit more and more fun things happening, and it's not in their best interest. But if we can reform the process so that it works with whatever the RCMP's got, and I think Mike's doing a lot of good work in that area, we can really encourage clubs to be more adventurous, more courageous, and students will stop having to bear the costs of having a reduced RCMP presence.
All right. Well, we've been here for a while, and I think we've learned a lot about where all the candidates stand on a number of issues. So I'm going to give them, beginning with Matt and going around to my right, 1 minute to tell everyone why they should be one of 2 people to represent the 45,000 or so students at UBC Vancouver on our highest board of governing.
Sure. I guess to start off with, it would have to be experience. I've been dealing on a lot of the issues that inevitably will go to the board for a decision, be it Gage South or on housing affordability through the Housing Action Forum. And I know the players on the board. I know how to work with the institution to get things done in the back rooms, in the meetings, building those relations. And I really want to now step from dealing with it before it gets to the board to now actually being a part of the decision-making process, and particularly around affordability and student well-being.
You're right. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to speak here and with everybody that's in this room. Looking forward to our next debate on Wednesday. I'm going to say the same thing Matt did. I'd like to rely on my experience as one of the reasons that students can go ahead and elect me. I sit on the board of directors for Kitsilano Neighborhood House. I'm very tied into the community here, and I think that I can utilize the skills and the acumen that I've learned doing things like being the director of the Global Student Entrepreneur Awards and being a strategic planner for a number of different chapters, being a mentor for the Canadian Youth Business Foundation, helping young entrepreneurs grow their businesses, pulling on all of the skills that I've developed together and applying them to this position on the board, while also taking the brand or the fun name that I've made for myself here, as the bald truth and as the person that's willing to stand up and fight. When the AMS decided that they were going to go ahead and push a salary increase without approaching the budget committee, I was the first person to try and put a stop to that. And when I raised the alarm, a petition automatically appeared with almost 1,000 signatures on it, and a referendum was nearly called. When I discovered that UBC was planning on withholding the U-passes from tuition from students that hadn't paid their tuition fees in September, one blog post and 2 days later, that's fixed. Thanks also to the UBC for your help on that. We can apply pressure to the administration in places in a way that doesn't have to be starting, torching buildings and having, great tracks and whatnot, to still get things done for students. I listen to students. I'm one of the people that I think has, at the AMS and whatnot, since I've been here, helped push student issues and protect student interests. Stopping spending gratuitous amounts of money on events that don't work and start applying them back to student services and whatnot. So I hope that students will look at my track record since I've been here and elect me to the board.
Sure. I think I'd be a good board representative again. Experience. I've been involved with infrastructure and construction and other capital projects here on campus ever since I stepped foot. Most notably the Engineering Student Center south of campus. We took that from an idea formed on one of the crummy couches in the cheese to what will hopefully be construction starting this summer. It's a $10,000 square foot building. And I'm also interested in some of the things we've talked about tonight. So transit, big issue for a lot of students. I'm interested in working on that both short-term, long-term. I'm really interested, as I mentioned, in getting students and alumni, I like alumni, an important part of this discussion, involved in these big capital building projects on campus. And the third big one is getting students recognized for what they're contributing to on campus. There's a lot of ways to do that. I'm particularly interested in the enriched educational experiences. And so yes, I think that's why I would be a good board representative.
Yeah, Justin? Okay, yeah. Cool. I'd really like to be your Board of Governors representative because, it's not really a question of experience. When we go around the table, all of us have experience, My experience happens to be with Senate, with AUS and SUS. But what I really want to say is that I'm a consummate student at heart. I work 2 jobs, I commute every day for the past 5 years. I understand student problems, and I really want to address them in tangible ways now. I have a history of working really hard to leave a place better than I have left it, than I came in. So for example, for SUS, for AUS, SUS, it was coming into a budget that was decimated by a $30,000 science grad to rebuilding its finances. For the EUS, I managed to pinch a budget together right away when they couldn't submit one and get it done. And this year I've really worked to build the foundations to make a better AUS. And so being a student, I'm always focused about student interests.
There are things I want to get done, and I know how to get them done. So I'd like to be on the board. Thank you.
Very well said. Yeah, I think I have a proven track record for getting things done, whether it be sitting on the board at CITR, whether it be sitting on the board of SLFS, being an arts representative for multiple years, or being vice president of administration right now. Dealing with clubs, there hasn't been any major club conflict this year or within the resource groups. I've really taken a proactive role in clubs and resource groups to really figure out what their problems are and deal with it before things start to flare up. And I think that really is a testament to my student-oriented leadership style. But as well, I can be very, very professional. Right now, I oversee the new sub-project, which is a $103 million development project. You're in negotiations with the university, high university officials, almost on a daily basis, and you can't be too overbearing and you can't be too polite. So I think I have definitely the know-how, the professionalism, and I know when to stand my ground, and I also know when to negotiate. So I think I'm an ideal candidate for board. And I don't know if there's time, but I'd also like to pose one question to everyone here. Which I think we didn't get around to at the tuition debate. I got a little bit sidetracked, but if you're elected to the board, would you abstain on the tuition vote? Would you ever abstain on the tuition vote? And if so, why? Thank you.
All right, well, I'll just put that up and then you can do closing statement. But just a show of hands to people who would consider abstaining on a increase in tuition on a vote for that.
There's a lot of variables in that. Not necessarily straw poll material, at least I don't feel that way. Some just raise your hand without knowing the context of the raise.
Well, you could raise your hand if you feel like you're if there's a reason why you would abstain. Raise your hand and explain in what circumstances would you abstain.
I can tell you this much. You have my commitment, Mike. Should I win this election, that I won't abstain. I'll either vote yes or no. I think it takes courage and conviction,
Yeah.
and regardless of what it is, you need to be able to make a firm decision.
I think exactly. I think
Yeah.
students should know what they're voting for.
Exactly.
Yes or no.
There's no way I would abstain on that vote.
And you don't have to know now. You know, you can
Yeah.
weigh the options, but you should know yes or no at least when it comes to the vote.
I agree.
All right. And Sumita, if you can finish with your closing statement.
Sure. So first of all, to Mike's question, yes, I would not abstain. I would make a firm decision, and it would definitely be what I think after weighing all the options and consulting with the students. Back to my little spiel for what I should tell you why you should re-elect me to the Board of Governors is because I have the enthusiasm, the passion, and the experience, for example, like most importantly, on the board, knowing how work is done. I think everyone on the table is very experienced, but I think I'm the one candidate with the most experience, most relevant experience in how work is done at the board. Before the board, I've been the president of the Science and Guide Society. I've been working as a VP external before and different positions in a variety of volunteer roles as well. I've been a commuter student for the first 2 years of my campus, and I've been a student who lived at Gage for the later part of the years. And I definitely feel that I can continue to work on the things that I've started, be it the transit issue, be it the student financial aid reform, or be it engaging students more in consultations. So I really feel that I will continue to be an effective student rep on the board and engage students more. I'm very approachable, easy to talk to, and I'm also very committed to what I do. And I think my peers and my endorsements will speak to that soon. Thanks.
All right. Well, once again, I want to thank all candidates for coming out to debating the issues and to showing their vast wealth of knowledge and experience to everyone today. This debate will be online for the entirety of the election, so to everyone out there, please vote. And you can continue to get all the coverage on the AMS elections at www.ubc.ca. Thanks very much.